like you now just for a moment think of the word responsible. I know sometimes when people used to say the word responsible to me meant, Craig, you're responsible for something, which sometimes can actually come with a feeling of a burden to take on that responsibility. However, when you think of the word responsible, it's actually formed by two words, which is response and able, which pretty much means our ability to respond. So, what does that got to do with why we're here today? You may have heard the experiment Pavlov's dog. Okay, if you haven't, it was where Russian scientist trained his dog that he'd ring a bell, he'd feed the dog, he'd ring a bell, he'd feed the dog, he'd ring a bell, he'd feed the dog. Such to the point that he then measured that he rang the bell and the dog salivated. Now, that's what in psychology terms is called a conditioned response. So an event happens and there's an automatic response. Now, I'm sure we'd all like to think that we're probably smarter than the dog. Okay? And one of the differences that humans have is we have another part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to actually think and respond differently. But how often in our lives do we operate in conditioned response? An event happens and we respond a certain way. The event happens, we respond again. Now, think of it at work. Something happens at work, maybe with a work colleague, and we immediately respond a certain way as to what we think they're thinking or the way they're feeling. Something that happens at home, maybe you're walking past the kid's bedroom again and it's an absolute mess, and you immediately go into disappointment, frustration, rage, whatever it might be, because you're now conditioned to go, when I see that, this is actually how I respond. The great thing is, as humans, we don't have to be like dogs. We don't have to take on conditioned habits. We have the ability to respond however we choose. So in that moment, once an event happens, we have the ability to change our response. And this is absolutely amazing and changes our lives, because all of a sudden we again start to see possibility. So Craig, what you're saying is, when this happens now, I don't have to respond this way. When something happens with my finances, I don't have to respond that way. Absolutely. You have the ability in that split second to respond completely differently. So, what we're talking about here with this principle is, we want to choose our end results, don't we? So rather than operating in this particular circle of conditioned by habit, when some event happens, we have a particular thought or a feeling which creates an action, which creates a result, we get some feedback, and away we go again. We're operating on that inner circle. We want to operate on the outer circle. Okay? This means that an event happens, and we, because we've determined our goal and what we want, we change our thought to match that feeling. So rather than feeling frustrated or disappointed by an event that's happening, we go, you know what? We want to see that as an opportunity. We want to actually take that and think what's possible. So when that event happens next time, I can change my thoughts. And then that will change my feelings and my emotions. So that means when I'm changing my feelings and emotions, I can actually align that action. So then my habits, which I'm now creating, are aligned to my goals. They're aligned to the outcomes I want to achieve, not what I don't want. And then we get feedback, and then now we're operating in this outside circle where at any point in time, we have the ability to actually change our thoughts and get a different response. Now though, we're changing our thoughts to move towards a response that we want. It's called the cybernetic loop, okay? And it's the thing that differentiates the humans from the animal kingdom. Our ability at any point in time to think differently, and our ability at any point in time to be able to choose the response to any event.